I'm excited to turn things right over to Rabbi Rachael Bregman, who is the rabbi of Temple Beth Tefillah in Brunswick, Georgia. Rabbi Bregman, take it away.
Thank you so much, Micah. It's really a pleasure to be here with everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen so we can see the blessing. I know I like to see the Hebrew because I'm always worried I'm going to forget, goof it up, which is like terrible form when you're the rabbi and you're in charge and you like say it wrong. All right, so here we have it on the screen. Let's all join together in the blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
Eloheinu melech
haolam
haolam,
asher kidshanu
asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav,
v'tzivanu
asok
la'asok b'divrei Torah.
b'divrei Torah.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. I really want them to write, to be busy with Torah, because that's really, I think, what our text is saying there. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a minute. I want to just talk to you guys briefly, get to know you a little bit better first, and then share with you from there. Trying to get my screen so I can see everybody. All right, there we go. I can see everybody. So I'm a rabbi in Brunswick, Georgia, about an hour south of Savannah, an hour north of Jacksonville. I have been at the synagogue for 12 years. I have to live here in the county, but I'm a part-time rabbi. I'm homeschooling. I'm a single parent, and I am homeschooling my daughter. So I have a 9-year-old who's with her tutor, and she may show her face. She thinks that like Zoom is like TV. So she's always excited to be on TV. She might make an appearance. Don't mind her, I'll just keep going. I wanted to tell you about who I am and where I'm from a little bit to help you, to share with you how I got to being really interested in the Piaseczno Rebbe. So I live in the Bible Belt. I'm from the Northeast, but I'm now in a locally large southern town, which means it's not large at all, but regionally it's the big place in town. It's the big city. It's the only city between Jacksonville and Savannah, and it's also the home of where Ahmaud Arbery was murdered in 2020, if you're familiar with that series of events. So I've been doing a lot of work here, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, around building community in a way that allows for hope when everything really hurts and everything's really painful. We've gone through a lot here, and I learned a ton in that experience of working with other clergy people and trying to lead our community through the trial, the aftermath, just all of it. I mean, it's very painful to live somewhere where you're known for your racism. So I think a lot about hope in these sort of challenging spaces, right? How do we feel hopeful when what we're looking at is just as a lot? It's very hard to take in. And over the last several years, I've been feeling, I imagine many of you here, more and more pressed for hope as the world is changing. And so I found myself a couple years ago starting to teach about other people who had flourished in times of challenge and despair, which is how I ended up coming across the Piaseczno Rebbe. So I understand that you guys studied with Rabbi Judith Siegel about 6 months ago, the Piaseczno Rebbe, and I'm going to touch on some of the things that she talked about, just as a reminder of some of his details, why he's so interesting, and then we'll talk a little bit about him. And I also want to talk about, I found this year feeling very, very hopeless or less hopeful. I'm generally an optimist, so my hope lives pretty high, but it was down low for a while, particularly after the hostages several months ago were killed right as we were hoping that we were going to get them back, right? And I found myself really lost and really bereft. And what gave me a sense of hope was listening to Rachel and John Poland Goldberg eulogize their son. And I thought, if these people in this moment can feel hopeful, then I better figure it out, right? I better find a way to be hopeful, because my life is a total walk in the park compared to what they've gone through. And not to do competitive suffering, right? But I felt inspired by both of them. Rachel, who really found a sense of feeling her son's homecoming and his peace within his death, and John, who gets up and gets everybody at a huge rally to sing Hatikva. Right, it was stunning, and it was just absolutely amazing and really moving. So inspired by them, I returned to looking at Holocaust teachers. And I think we really like Viktor Frankl because he's like packaged everything up so neatly and so beautifully. And I love his material. If you're familiar with him, right, he has a whole psychological theory that he built after his experience in the Holocaust. And he comes out and says, look, it's really about perspective, right? You can focus on the good and the beautiful. You can always find good and beautiful. I'm sure you studied Frankl here as well. I would be shocked if after over like a year of this, no one's brought up Frankl. But what I really like the Piaseczno Rebbe. So I want to talk about him briefly. And now I'm going to share my screen. Now that you have a little more of my background and how I come to love this person and feel really deeply inspired by the Piaseczno. All right, how will this work? Oh, there it is. There we go. Okay, so this is him. Kalonymus Kalman Shapira. This is like the only picture we have of him, the only photograph we have of him. So everything I see is always this one photo. So here's this guy. He was the chief rabbi of Piaseczna in Poland, and was amongst the people who were round up into the Warsaw Ghetto. And in Warsaw, he becomes the chief rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, and he runs a secret synagogue and a secret yeshiva, and he does all these amazing things to keep Jewish life alive, right? And he's a Hasidic master. He's a deep spiritualist. And what I find so amazing about him is not only that he survived through a lot of the Shoah, or he survives the liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto. He lives a little bit longer in another concentration camp where he's ultimately murdered. But that he did it from a perspective of spirituality. And he wanted to maintain a sense of closeness with the divine, whatever that means, meant for him, whatever that means for us. And I find that really moving, because I can imagine in times of real deep despair, it's easy to rail against God and to just let that go. But he didn't. So he's like well known, right? And lots of people have written about him. And what I really love, and I'm going to just tell you what this says, so we don't have to read off of the screen, because that's just a mean thing to do to people at noon in the middle of the day. So Nehemiah Poland, who's one of our great modern scholars, he's out of Boston. He writes about the Piaseczno Rebbe. And what I find so stunning about his observation was that here's this guy who's writing about the experience of the Holocaust in real time of the Holocaust, right? You have lots of people who write about it afterwards and are outside of it, or after the fact will write a memoir about what happened to them during. This is one of the very, very few pieces of texts that we have of somebody who is writing about it while it's happening. So his perspective is so raw and unadulterated. And also what he did was he wrote, he gave a weekly sermon and he would write his sermons down. There was a group of sociologists who were also in the Warsaw Ghetto, a little bit of everybody there, who were encouraging people to save, to collect, right? They knew that the perception of Jews in the ghetto were vermin, and they wanted to counteract that perspective And so they did it by just being themselves and writing down what their experience was while it was happening. Okay, right, those are the things I said. So he has all of his writings. It's all put in. If you guys remember from Judith Siegel, there was this collection of these large milk crates, these huge milk containers. There are 3 of them that are buried in the Warsaw Ghetto. Only 2 of them have been found. One of them is gone, presumably for forever. The guy who found them, right, so it's after the war, and there's this Catholic guy who's working the backhoe. He just happened to be the guy in the seat. And he goes to uproot some of the rubble that is the Warsaw Ghetto. And he hits something that goes ding, and he stops. Like this incredibly powerful moment where here's a person whose job it is to dig up all the mess, but something makes him stop. And he goes and he looks and he realizes that there's a thing here, and they unearth it, and it is this crate that is full of writings and recipes and real-time journals about people's lives in the Warsaw Ghetto. The particular pieces from the Piaseczno Rebbe are collected and they're sent. He wrote a note that says, please send this to my brother in Israel, which that was honored. And his brother in Israel publishes the Piaseczno Rebbe's writings during the Holocaust posthumously under the title of Eish HaKodesh, Holy Fire, which I think is a really brave name for text that is gathered during the Holocaust and then published afterwards. So the Piaseczner, what I find so extraordinary about him is that he has these 3 main ideas that he teaches the course of his time in the Warsaw Ghetto. The first one is about grounding in yourself, right? So when things are really difficult, he wanted people to observe their inner experience and find a sense of peace and calm internally. He wanted people to do that by singing, by mantra, right? I mean, like he's like this Zen Buddhist guy, kind of, with Pius in the 30s in Warsaw. He felt that if you found a piece of text, or if you were having a hard time kind of grounding, find a piece of text and just repeat it over and over again. I don't think he knew anything of Zen Buddhism, but really had this bend towards finding inner peace and calm, no matter what's going on. So this, I think, is a really phenomenal step that says, you know what, you bloom where you're planted. You don't get to pick the environment that you're in. You only get to choose how you respond to it, which is a lot of what also what Viktor Frankl had to say from a similar experience, right? Frankl talks about going out and watching the sunset from the barracks, and everyone being in awe of how beautiful the sunset is, even though they're interred in concentration camps and work camps. The second piece that the Piaseczno Rebbe pushed, I think it is so specific to his environment, and there's a lot for us to learn about it here, is that you have to be deeply honest with the divine. And I want to read this text because it's really worth getting in its entirety. He wrote that there is a secret gate, a gate of grief, a hidden place where God goes to shed tears. It's like amazing, this idea that God goes somewhere private to cry. The hiding of God's presence is a common metaphor for times of collective suffering, but Shapira tells us that in these moments, God is hiding away and crying along with us. Our grief is experienced, as it were, by the Creator. God, too, feels our isolation, rage, and fear. When we do not abandon our true feelings, we are not abandoned. We are, in fact, connected with the heart of the one who made us. So he wanted for people to take their deepest grief and despair and share it with the divine. Which, if you think about society, right, like the idea of being honest and true with your feelings in the 2020s is not unusual. We live in a world where we encourage everybody to say exactly what they're feeling all the time, and maybe we should like pull back from that just a smidgen. But here this guy is in the 1930s, and he's saying, tell God the truth. Tell God how angry you are, how sad, how scared, how lonely, and be honest. I want to say brutally honest, but I don't think it's not intended to be brutal. Be fully honest with the divine, and the divine will meet you there. But if you are willing to say, I am heartbroken and I am bereft, the divine will sit there with you and say, I too am heartbroken, I too am bereft. And that there's real comfort in that, right? There was a real sense, I think, of him never feeling really deeply alone. Micah.
I hope it's okay I raised my hand, but
Please.
This moved me so much that I just had to respond to it. You just said something interesting. You said in 2024, we tell people to share their feelings and we're all about sharing our feelings, but the truth is that it doesn't always feel okay to cry. And I think that, even in a world where it's okay to be your real honest self, crying is still a taboo. And so the idea of God as a model for for crying, a model for feeling sad is very, very like just deeply powerful for me. And I just, yeah, I don't know. I just needed to say that, how incredibly powerful I found this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the idea of God weeping with us also feels so safe, right? And I think, to your point, some part of that is because we don't feel really good about crying. We definitely don't live in a society that says, go ahead, shed your tears, and that we're going to shed our tears. I mean, Holocaust, right? You're going to cry, and that you don't have to do that alone, and that you can step into this private place that is also God's private place. And I love that God still like cries in private, but you can go in there if you want to and be present. Susan.
I too find this incredibly moving. However, this is something where Peter Senge, who writes about change in organization, talks about holding a distance, because there is a cognitive dissonance that arises here for me as an agnostic.
Do you want to say any more about the cognitive dissonance there?
Well, I do not experience or accept the notion of an active God.
Got it.
There is something, and this is very beautiful way of describing something, the something. So when I put it in those terms, it is no longer cognitively dissonant.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the focus is the idea that you're not alone, right? And however you can lean into that sense of the divine or the sacred. I'm not a huge fan of the word God. I think it gets us really stuck, right? So I like language of divinity and sanctity. We can feel those feelings. And I love this idea that no matter what is happening in your world, there are moves we can make to feel connected to something sacred. And that I find freeing from whatever is challenging, right? Challenges are going to come our way no matter what. Like that's part of the deal. You're gonna be a human, it's gonna be hard. What you do with that is really up to us, and to lean into a sense of sanctity, to lean into a sense of divinity in moments of heartbreak, I think is not a move we regularly think to do. And I think there's a lot of power in it, particularly in this context. Okay, so time of course flies by. So I'm going to share with you the third one, and I love this. The third thing that the Piaseczno Rebbe taught was be kind. So the story goes like this. Shlomo Carlebach, who's a 20th century teacher and rabbi and an interesting character in modern Jewish stuff, encounters this man who was a student of the Piaseczno Rebbe's, who had survived the Holocaust and tells the story to Karlbach. And the story is that this man is in Auschwitz and he is bereft and he is despairing and he is just at rock bottom, and he can hear, he had sat at the rabbi's table in Piaseczno for a long time. And so when he finds himself in Auschwitz, he hears his rabbi's voice in his head, and he hears the rabbi saying, do someone a favor, be kind, do someone a favor, right? This was like the Rebbe's mantra pre-Holocaust. And here's this guy in the Holocaust who hears this, and in hearing this wisdom of being kind for people, decides that that's how he's going to orient himself to Auschwitz. And here's this great line. I love this line here from Karlbach. Do you know, he said to Karlbach, how many favors you can do in Auschwitz? Performing acts of kindness for his fellow inmates was one of the things that made life bearable in the camp. So this is from a translation from Andrea Cohen-Kiner, Holy Torah from the Holy Fire. Anyway, so these are the three things that the Piaseczno Rebbe tries to teach, have tried to teach to those around him during his time of duress that gave him hope and gave those around him hope. And I know for me, I find these three pieces of wisdom, ground in yourself, right? Find the peace within. Know that the divine is with you if you're willing, and to be kind to other people. So I'm gonna stop my screen share here. I don't think I put anything else in. Thank you. Here we go. I want to see if anyone has, we have 5 minutes, 4 probably really. I'd love to hear what you're thinking, any questions you might have. Thinking or feeling. We like both those things.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Toby.
Hi, I have a daughter in New York who is terribly struggling with what's going on now, not only in Israel, in Gaza, but also what's going on in New York City and the level of anti-Semitism that is definitely growing. I've taken the liberty of taking photographs of all of these sayings, and I'm going to send them to her with hopes that I'm really surprised that living here in the United States that she is as troubled at that level as she is. She has posted so many, what I find, I don't usually go to Facebook, and I did go to Facebook and I found all these things that she was writing. I said, is this what's going on in my daughter's heart? It's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. So I'm hoping that this will help. I also have a son who has become ultra-Orthodox. My problem with sharing it with him is that they will never say God. They will never. So I need to, I guess, send it to him with a little note attached. Please forgive that part of the message and just read the wonderful message, because it's so uplifting. It helps, it really is a survival technique. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you shared with us. That's what I have to say.
If Micah, thank you so much. Micah, if it's possible, I'm happy to share the link to my slides so that you can just have it.
Definitely. If you send it to me, what I'll do is I'll post the link in the YouTube link so that people can, if they go to watch the video, they can also download the slides.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Jody.
Hi, thank you so much for this teaching and this session. I wrote in the chat before that I study with I'm in the middle of making Aliyah, and I study with Yiska Smith in Jerusalem, and she leads the fan clubs, right? Or I thought so. Maybe she's got some company. I did not know the basis for her passion about the Piaseczno Rebbe, and so learning that has been great for me today. Excuse me. But what prompts me to speak up is that I am a strong single Jewish woman in recovery from alcoholism for many years. And when I began to learn the steps, I began to learn how I did not know. And I was definitely not connected with my faith in any way.
Mhm.
Like I said, I have just passed the 10-year anniversary. And over time, I've come to treasure more and more all of those touch points. There are so many. The principle
Mhm.
underlying the first step in the 12 steps is honesty. Um,
Right.
every day when I pray, when I make a dedication and I state my intent to myself, um, I am thanking my higher power. I am asking my higher power for help. And I am taking time to be awestruck at the miracles in the world. And I did not know that there was so much of that, that I had so much in common, quite frankly. But the other thing is that when this has just been my experience, I know that keeping myself happy and healthy and relatively, safe, means turning my gaze away from the dark thoughts or the negatives. And it's not a question of stuffing your feelings. We start out talking about feelings. I have learned finally what feelings are. I still struggle to get in touch with them. And because I was willing to listen and learn, um, there were several suggestions that were made to me about writing as a way to just get it out. Um, I enjoy the fellowship of recovery meetings because other people in recovery, you get me, and I have a real sense of community with that. But there's also this humility piece that I hear
Mhm.
from you, not specifically using that word, but this morning, the humility piece that is a big part of my daily practice.
Mm.
And I can't quote, I'm not going to quote, but there's a Dr. Bob who was Bill W.'s partner in devising the program in the beginning, has a definition of humility on his desk, and it's engraved on his gravestone when you go to visit. I haven't seen it in person, but I've got it printed out and I look at it when I want to be inspired, when I see a touch of my selfishness pop up, because there's a place I can go to be alone with my God, higher power, kneel in silence and in peace and understanding and confess all, or feel loved, or feel um, uh, that someone that there's energy that has empathy for what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
That humility and the getting out of yourself by doing service and doing acts of kindness is huge in my recovery life today. So I wanted to share this because
Yeah. Thank you
I'm
so much.
never astounded.
I'm definitely moved by the 12 steps. I think they're really powerful, and I love how this gets in line. And sorry, that's my dog. Micah, do we have time for Cheryl to share?
I think so. Is everybody okay if we take 2 more minutes? If
Fine.
folks have to go, we understand, but let's do one last comment and then we'll wrap things up quickly.
Um, so what I want to say is that the couple of comments, finding peace within and being kind are kind of wrapped up together because it's very hard to be kind if you don't have peace within. But on the other hand, if you push yourself to be kind, it helps to build peace within because it helps you to feel better about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful, right? There's a feedback loop there.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank
Well,
you for that, Cheryl.
let me say a huge thank you to Rabbi Rachael Bregman. This was interesting and moving, and I'm so glad that we got to study this together, and I'm so glad that you taught this to us this morning. Next week, we will be studying with Rabbi Leah Berkowitz, a friend of the program, a friend of Tikva Through Text and La Asok, who we've
Friend of
learned.
mine too.
There you go. She's a great teacher. So Rachel, come back next week and study with Leah with us. I also just really briefly, I just want to put in a quick plug. This week, as you know, was our Giving Tuesday drive, and we actually received a generous challenge grant from a participant. And so this week and this month, in fact, every dollar that's given to LASOK is matched up to $2,000. So if you feel so inclined, you can support LASOK at the link that I just put into the chat. And it goes especially to support programs like Tikva through Text and our other drop-in programming, which are free and open to the community, and to make sure that our programming is always accessible to everybody. So this is the week and the month to do that. And I want to thank our anonymous participant for this challenge grant. Once again, thanks to Rabbi Rachael Bregman. Thank you, everybody, for this very moving discussion, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.